On Tuesday, I was in a coffee shop with my laptop, and a man that I know but not very well, who is not Catholic, said, "Hey, Father, what are you working on your sermon?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I am." He said, "Here's what you got to tell the folks. You got to find a way to live life and be happy." He said, last year my wife died, and I was really sad, and it's been really hard. But you know what I came to realize? She's died, but I haven't. And I got to live. I've got to live my life. So you tell them, Father. Tell them they got to find a way to live and be happy. The end. And I smiled because, after all, he had no way to know that it was Gaudete Sunday, the Sunday of joy in our tradition. It reminded me of a study that I read about by a nurse who had worked her entire life in hospice care with people at the end of their life. And she noticed that there were some common things that people said on their deathbed that they wish they'd done differently. And of these common deathbed regrets, the most common one was, "I wish I had let myself be happier." Isn't that interesting wording? Let myself be happier. It shows that when we're getting ready to die, we recognize, I had some choice here. I should have allowed myself to be a little happier, to exercise my own power over my happiness. Because a lot of us base our happiness often on things like how the weather is, which right now is not good, how much light and brightness there is in our life, which this time of year there's not much. We depend on things to go our way, or, goodness gracious, politics to make us happy. That's not going to happen. So we wind up feeling like we're on a roller coaster of emotion when we're called to recognize that there's a part of happiness that's our responsibility. John the Baptist today was answering questions for people in response to what he had told them. He had said to the crowds, "You are on the wrong path, everyone. You're not on a road to happiness, and you need to course correct, or you will not like how your life turns out." That got their attention. So they said, "What are we supposed to do? What should we do?" And the very first thing that he said was, share. Share. If you have someone in your life that doesn't have clothes and you've got clothes, share what's in your closet. If someone is hungry and you've got some food, share what you have. And if you pay attention to people in life, you know that the people who share the most, the people who are the most generous, they're just about always the happiest. There's some people that you can't even compliment them on something that they're wearing or they'll give it to you. "I love that scarf. You'll be wearing it after that." And it's a wonderful quality. And it usually goes hand in hand with being very happy. Sometimes we're not sure how to go about the sharing because the problems of the world are so big. Even in our own community, there's so many people in need, we don't know where to start. And so we get paralyzed. So one time Mother Teresa was talking with someone who came to visit her, and they said, "How do you handle all of the needs that you face? I mean, there's 3 billion people in the world that are hungry. How do you feed them all?" She said, "If you can't feed them all, just feed one. One at a time, we share what we have. One at a time." And it's important for us to remember that we don't need to necessarily share material goods. Sharing goes far beyond just money and things. I'm thinking of a man that I knew in Oneonta when I was stationed there as a priest. His name was George Seeger, and he was somebody who had early in life had so much faith that he had pursued the priesthood and gone to the seminary, but it wasn't the right fit. And when you met his wife, Madeline, you knew why. They were just meant to be together, hand in a glove. And they had 5 grown children. They'd had plenty of highs and lows over the years, but they had a beautiful life and great faith. One of George's adult daughters called me and said, Dad is in the hospital and it's pretty bad. And we're worried because he seems to not be getting that this is serious, that he might not be coming home. Can you go talk to him? So I just said I would. And when I went into the hospital, I could see what they were worried about because he was as jolly as could be. Laying in his bed, smiling at everybody. And I said to him, George, what can I do to help you? He said, you know what you can do, Father? Do you see that nurse out there in the hallway? He said, I was saying to her, you're so wonderful. Your husband is so lucky. And she said, I'm not married. And I asked, how is someone as wonderful as you not married? And she said, I was engaged, but my fiance died in a car accident. He said, you know what you can do for me? Pray for her. My problems are nothing compared to hers. Can you imagine that, Father? How hard. While we were talking, someone came in to mop the floor with a Swiffer. He said, there he is, the next CEO of this hospital. He's the best guy in this whole place. Let me tell you, you're incredible. You keep doing what you're doing. You're making a difference. Then came a nursing assistant to take his blood pressure. Here she is. Made her feel like solid gold. Everybody who came in, he did the same thing to. And it was all unique. It wasn't just some kind of plastic way of speaking with people. Everybody got their own special compliment that was specially crafted for exactly who they were. So I said to him, George, do you ever wonder if maybe this is the illness that you won't recover from? Do you ever wonder if maybe you won't be going home from this? And he said, well, of course. And he turned to the bedside table next to him and opened the drawer and got out a yellow notepad. He said, I've been working on my obituary. Listen to this. And he started reading the obituary to me. And when he got to the last paragraph, he said, George's Mass will be at St. Mary's Church on thus and such day and time. And in lieu of flowers, go out and make someone laugh. And that's the part he was proudest of. He said, we don't need a bunch of flowers dying in a vase somewhere. Go out and make someone laugh. That's going to last. And I thought of him as like a fountain. You know, he was just spraying all of this beautiful, refreshing water for everybody to come. And it was all free. You could just come. Being around him was a way to be refreshed. And I felt so much that that's one of his most generous ways of being. I didn't leave with any money. I didn't leave with any physical gifts, but I left feeling so uplifted because he was so generous. It's funny that he told people to tell jokes in lieu of flowers because, you know, there's always those moments sometimes where you'll see people laughing at something, and even if they're strangers, you'd love to know what it is because they look so joyful, and so you'd say, what's so funny? What are you laughing at? And they'll say, oh, nothing. Which always is such a buzzkill, isn't it? I mean, why not share what's funny? When I was a teacher, the same thing would happen. I would see kids talking and, you know, maybe they shouldn't have been talking. And so I'd say, what's so funny? And they would always say, oh, nothing, Mr. V. And I would always say to them, I promise you that if you make me laugh, you won't get in trouble. If it's really funny what you're saying, you won't get in trouble. Because sharing laughter is a generous thing to do. And you know a good reason to be joyful? Is because God is joyful. And we know that's true because no one is more generous than God. God shares everything with us. God's the most generous in all the world, in all of the universe. So we would have nothing without God sharing it with us. So of course, God is joyful. Sometimes we project onto God all this negativity. We think God is grouchy or God is easily irritated. But where do we get that idea? God is joyful. And we hear that in the first reading. I loved that reading. Did you hear that line? God will sing joyfully because of you, as one sings at festivals. Isn't that an image? God at a festival singing about you joyfully? I mean, and if you've been to festivals at all in the summer, you know, near the end of the festival, the singing, it's kind of out of hand, especially around the beer tent. Isn't that a great image of God having been at a festival all day and singing maybe just a little bit too rowdily about how wonderful you are? What a wonderful way to imagine God thinking about us. So this week, we are being asked, do I take responsibility for my joy? Do I recognize that I have a role in this? Do I share what I have, materially or spiritually or emotionally? Do I tell other people jokes? If something is said about somebody behind their back that's positive, do I tell them so that they get to hear it instead of never knowing? If there's a funny plaque at a diner that just would tickle someone I know, do I take a photo of it and show them? I was thinking of you. I thought you'd get a kick out of this. That's a generous way to be, and it leads to joy. Is there a chance that 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, we're going to look back on this time in our life and realize that it actually was pretty good? Well, that was back when the kids were home. Oh my gosh, that's when Down Street was this certain way, or that's right before we moved to wherever. And you'll realize that this actually was a very joyful time. Well, if you're going to look back wistfully at this 10 years from now or 20 years from now, why not enjoy it a little bit now? And say there's a lot of good going on right now. There's a lot that's joyful. The top regret of those at the end of their life who were dying was that they hadn't let themselves be happier. Let's not make the same mistake.